Hey guys, welcome. So let's get started. First off, hope everyone had a nice 3-day weekend. I want to just kind of go over a couple of things. First off, your midterm is going to be like 11 days from now, Friday, January 29th. Pretty much all of next week, we will spend the time studying for the midterm. So there's really, you don't have to get a head start on studying, but if you'd like to, just click on the classwork, quiz test prep, and go to the midterm review. Kind of get started with that. I think that'd be really helpful if you want to get a head start on that studying. You'll have your last textbook Thursday for the month, which will be due this Thursday. You will not have one next week because we will be preparing for the midterm, so I don't need you to do a textbook assignment. All right. And that will lead us into today. So for today, we are going to be going to the second part of Unit 4. And then we stop halfway through Unit 4 to start preparing for our midterm, because halfway through Unit 4 is halfway through the year, pretty much. So that's why we go to the midterm. So last week we spent all of the time on immigration. Now we're going to industrialization, which is in the same time era, but a little bit of a different lens that we're going to look through of what's going on. What you'll notice about the 4 topics from this unit is it's all happening around the same time, but different things are going on in this country that we kind of have to narrow in and focus in on. All right. So I'm going to stop presenting for a second, and then I'm going to go over to the other thing. So 1 second. And then we obviously have our notes that we have to do and our usual assignment. Could you guys in the chat let me know, please, if any of your teachers have let you know that you'll be taking I think it's a math test on Thursday and Friday, a MAPS assignment? Okay, so that is true, but that also means, especially if you are in, so 8D1, it won't be too much of an issue on Thursday because I'm going to see you guys 8th period. But if you have me through those periods 1 through 4, you're going to have an assignment that you're going to have to complete for social studies, very similar to what you went on double period Monday. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. I wouldn't mind usually just saying, okay, you can have social studies off because you guys have a test. I really usually wouldn't mind that. But I think in preparation for the midterm, I think it's best if we get through this week. This way you have a full week of studying. I don't want to have to push back a week and then you guys miss 1 or 2 days of studying because of this MAPS test. Also, it's not exactly very fair to me because I found out about the MAPS test, I don't know, this morning. So I'm not going to change my whole week plan. And I know a lot of you will finish the MAPS test early and can go work on social studies. So I just want to give you guys that heads up. I apologize because the kind of message with you guys a little bit, but I don't think it's wise before midterm to delay the amount of stuff that we do. All right. So let's first start with why does a country want to have industry? I know we've kind of talked about industry already in this class, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into it now. So I'll give you a minute to copy this down, okay? And we will go over why it's important for a country to have industry. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the very confusing definition of industry again to you guys. I think we have a little bit of understanding already, but with the definitions kind of there, we'll break it down. So let me teach it like you've never heard of it before because I think it's good to just review a little bit. So industry is the economic activity concerned with the processing of raw materials and manufacture of goods in factories, which seems a little bit confusing, but when you break down all of the key words there, it shouldn't be. Okay, let's start with raw materials. You're going to get raw materials all throughout the world, all throughout the earth. You can get these materials. The goal of industry, usually, is to take a raw material and you're going to, have examples like wheat, okay, wood, iron, all of these raw materials. And then the goal of industry is to try and take those raw materials and manufacture them into a good. okay, usually in a factory. A good is another word for a product. All right. So I always give the example of a pencil. All right. The pencil is made up of a lot of different raw materials. You have the graphite, you have the wood, you have the lead. You have a lot of different raw materials that the pencil is made out of. Okay. You can't go outside in the earth and find a pencil. Okay. You have to get a pencil usually from the store. You have to buy it because that is a product that is created. All right. Industry is the situation that is going to create all of the products, usually within our country. Now, you have two types of industry for the most part. Okay, you have product industry, okay, and you have service industries. Okay, I am a teacher in the service industry. I am providing a service to you. Okay, there is knowledge that I have. Okay, there's a curriculum that I have that I am sharing with you guys and providing a service to educate you guys. Okay, there's all this knowledge out there. I am providing a service to you guys by trying to guide you in the right direction to have the right education. Okay, the industry we're going to focus in more for this topic, though, is going to be more of the product industries. All right, we should know at this point in our country, the South was usually made up of farming. The North was usually made up of industry. The North, after especially they win the Civil War, okay, people see the importance of industry, right, and the importance of creating all of these raw materials. So let's look at some reasons why a country wants to have industry. Number one, industrial countries or countries that have a focus on industry can create objects or goods at a very fast rate for people to use. Now, I can understand as an 8th grader, you guys sitting there and saying, this is kind of boring, kind of stupid. But literally, just look around your room, okay? The laptop, the TV, the phone, okay? The desk you're on, okay? The keyboard you're using. Every single item pretty much in your house right now is made from an industrial factory, basically, made through industry. You don't get to have all of these cool things of technology. You don't get to have video games. You don't get to have your phone without industry. All right? You can't farm a phone. Right? You can't grow the crop of a phone. All right, you need a factory to do it. You need industry to do it. So if you want to have a more technologically advanced country, okay, you want to be able to have a good industrial economy. Okay, otherwise you don't get all of these cool things that we have. Okay, and the reason is you can create objects or goods at a very fast rate for people to use. Okay, and it works in this type of setting. The faster you can make a product, ladies and gentlemen, the faster you can make a product, the more money it's going to make the country. Because if people are buying a lot of products and it's good quality, they're spending more money, and that's going to improve the economy in a country. All right, so the more products there are, the more chances people get to buy stuff. All right, number two, why does a country also want to have industry? Jobs are very easy to do and easy to come by. This is why there are so many immigrants that take jobs in factories and take jobs in industry. This is why so many immigrants move to the Northeast into urban cities where the factories are, because you don't need to speak English. When I say easy to do, I don't mean like it's an easy job, like you're not going to work hard. You're going to work hard, but you don't have to be highly educated to do it. You don't have to speak the language to do it. So we kind of have this endless cycle. We've talked about this already, that since there's a rise in immigrants coming into the country, we have a rise in industry. And since we have a rise of industry and factory jobs, we're going to have more immigrants coming in. It just kind of works in this endless cycle, okay? We talked about immigrants toward the end about not being liked so much by, nativists and people within the country. But you know who loved immigrants? Factory owners. Because factory owners could hire tons of immigrants, usually for a cheaper price, and they loved having the immigrants around because also a lot of them worked very hard and did a great job. All right. Number three, industrial economies can make a ton of money for the country because they can do something called mass produce, okay, which is the first time you're seeing the word, but not the last. It means you make a lot of a product, you make it cheaply, and you make it quickly. There's three components of mass production. Okay, if you want to make a ton of money, find a way to mass produce a product. Okay, great example of this is a car. Okay, there were cars around in 1890, believe it or not. You never saw any of them, though, because they were so incredibly difficult to make. But by 1915, you will learn that they start to become mass produced because they found a way to make a lot of it for a cheap price and quickly. And since you had the opportunity to mass produce a product, okay, there became a lot of them to find. Why do pencils cost, basically 5 cents? Is because these are so incredibly easy to make, and you can make a lot of them. Therefore, there's a lot of them around. All right, so a country has a lot of benefits if they want to become industrial. Okay, now we're going to look at some vocabulary for this unit. Okay, some words that are going to come up a lot over the next couple of weeks and months, and for one of the words, even throughout the rest of the year. So we definitely need to copy these down because we got to become more familiar with these words. I'm going to give you a minute to do it. But this is kind of a review. We had already kind of gone through industry when we were on Unit 2 a little bit. Now we're going to go into a lot further detail because our country is going to go through a huge rise in industry from 1870 to 1920. All right, so let's take a look here. All right, so please copy down these 3 words. I'll give you a minute to do it, and then we'll go over these. And I know it's so easy for you guys to just sit there and not take the notes. I get it, trust me. But please copy these down. Please stay on top of the notes. I know the people that are usually taking notes and handing in all their assignments are doing very well on the tests and quizzes. All right, so please keep copying these down. Yeah, laissez-faire, or we're going to talk about this word a lot over the next couple of months. Okay, so let's go over the first term. So sometimes we have this period known as the Gilded Age. Okay, I don't really ever see it on the Regents. This was something more when I was your age. This is how I understood this time. The Gilded Age is a time era from like around 1865 to 1900. It's after the Civil War, but it's before like modern America. It's like kind of us getting to the more modern looking United States. So it's the time era that goes along with the rise of immigration. What it's known more throughout is called the industrialization era. Okay. So the reason why I'm giving you both terms is I sometimes see the word Gilded Age on like some DBQ stuff, but like usually the word is more immigration, industrialization based. So what happens is we're going to have many cities growing and people moving from farming, being farmers, to being factory workers. You're also going to have why it's called the Gilded Age. You're going to have an extreme discrepancy between the extremely rich people in the country and the extremely poor. There was what we call no middle class. Now, with 2021, the way we live is you really don't have that many rich people comparatively. You don't have really that many poor people. You kind of have everyone in the middle. Okay, you have probably like 5% of the country's rich, 5% of the country is poor, and the rest are kind of just somewhere in the middle. Okay, we have what's called a middle class. But during the Gilded Age, you just had extremely rich people that had everything, and the extremely poor who had practically nothing. There was very little in between. All right, and those rich people were usually consistent of the factory owners, the government leaders, And it was kind of this whole notion where there wasn't really any collective helping out the poor. People are looked at to work and live on their own. Now, we still have that in 2021. People are expected to make a living for themselves, but we have some help there if people are in need. All right, so let's go over this very important term, laissez-faire. It's probably the most important term over the next couple of weeks. It's a little bit intimidating because it's a French word, but if you know what laissez-faire breaks off to, it basically is a very simple word for hands off. Okay, so anytime I see laissez-faire or I say laissez-faire, think of hands off, don't want to get involved. Okay, someone who's laissez-faire has a laissez-faire attitude, is very much like doesn't want to get involved in people's drama, just wants to stay away, doesn't want to get involved with anything. Okay, so let's go back to the founding of our country. Our country was founded on the notion of freedom. Okay, and the notion of staying away from a very strong central government. Remember, Britain, very strong central government, controlled the colonies. So laissez-faire is the opposite of that. Our government has always been kind of founded on the notion of laissez-faire. It is especially laissez-faire when it comes to the economy. So what does that mean? Basically, the whole idea is, back in this time, the government shouldn't get involved in the economy. All right? It's the idea, laissez-faire, that the government does not tell the factory owners how much to pay their workers. It doesn't tell people how much to work. It doesn't tell them how long to work. Okay? Laissez-faire is basically let people make their own decisions in what's known as the free market. Okay? So let's think about what that means. So when you go and buy something, you have the choice on what you want to buy. Okay, you have free choice and all the freedom you want, and you want to choose to buy. Is that a good thing? Yeah, I would say it's a good thing. If you're asking me my personal opinion, yes, Neve, I think it's a good thing, but it's a debated thing. Some people may think otherwise, because when you have freedom to buy what you want, you can buy literally whatever you want. Let's say you get a paycheck for $400 for working a job. If you want to take that paycheck and spend all $400 on a pair of sneakers and spend nothing else, and that's your choice. No one can stop you from spending your type of money. And the government can't really tell you, how to spend your money. So when it comes to people making money, when it comes to jobs, at this time, the government has pretty much no say. They just let the economy work itself out. And there are some pros with this, and there are some cons with this. Okay? You're going to see the pros with it because you're going to see people make a ton of money. You're going to see some of the richest human beings and some of the richest times in American history throughout this time. But you're also going to see some cons with it where people do not do particularly well under this setup. All right. So having a hands-off type government, having a laissez-faire government is a debated thing. And really, if you were to ask a historian or an economist, really is you want to find the perfect amount of laissez-faire. You don't want a completely hands-off government, okay? You want somewhere of the government being somewhat involved, making sure that there's regulations and people doing the right thing and people doing the right thing with their money, and also not too much control. And the way I like to give the example is always with the teacher. If as a teacher, let's say we're in class, okay, too much laissez-faire is like, you know what, hey, great, you guys are on your own. I'm going to leave the classroom. I trust you guys to do the right thing. That may work for some people, but for some people, they need to have the teacher there. Okay, if you have too much teacher control, if the teacher's like constantly nagging you on top of you and being extremely strict, that may work for some students, but it may not work for others. I like to think, the best type of teacher is someone who's somewhat hands-off, but also helps you out a little bit when you're in need. You want to find the perfect balance. Okay, that's what I always try and do as a teacher. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it or good at it, but that's how I always try and act as a teacher. I have the perfect amount of laissez-faire. Our economy works the same way. You want to have a certain amount of government intervention and making sure the government is, making sure that people aren't being mistreated and the economy is doing the right thing. But you don't want to have too much. Too much government control in the economy is going to hurt the economy. Too little is going to hurt the economy. You want to be somewhere in between. All right. So we'll constantly come back to this word laissez-faire. I just wanted to introduce it throughout the first time, throughout this unit, but you'll see it a lot throughout this class going forward. All right, and the last term is not a huge term, but I do want to mention it, the New South. So for this whole entire class, we've had this whole kind of setup, right? The South had farming, the South had plantations, the South had slaves, right? The North had industry, the North didn't need slaves. We've gone through this whole battle. Now slavery's ended, okay? Now the South wants to have a shift in its economic policy. It's not going to completely get rid of farming. I don't want to say that, but it's going to have a shift and a focus to now incorporating industry. So this is the term given to the South after Reconstruction, okay? If you remember, the South really struggled in the Civil War because they didn't have the industrial factories like the North did. Okay, agriculture ultimately failed because when it came up versus an industrial part of the country, it failed. It couldn't stand up to what the North had with its supplies and its mobilization of all of the factories. All right, the railroads. Okay, so the South is going to have a shift. This is a term given to the South after Reconstruction where they tried to incorporate industry in the Southern economy. So you're going to have a lot more industry in the South. A good example of is like Nashville, Tennessee. They're going to have a lot of industry. Georgia is another place. Atlanta, Georgia is going to have a lot of industry. Can't think of any others off the top of my head, but those are some big cities that came up after the time. All right, where you have now more factories and not exactly all farming. You'll have less farming, but it doesn't get fully taken away. All right. And we'll wrap this up with one more slide here before we get to our assignment and some Regents questions, which is going to be some of the negatives with industry. Okay, so we looked at the pros, we looked at the cons, we looked at some vocabulary. Just so you kind of have a full thought on kind of what industry is and the good and the bad with it. Okay? All right, so what are the problems with industry working in a factory? So I'll give you a minute to copy this down. This is the last slide for this period before we get to the assignment. All right. So what are the problems with industry or working in a factory? Well, number one, the jobs are generally extremely dangerous for a couple of reasons. Number one, working with the machines are just dangerous. Okay, if you go into a factory now and you make the wrong move or you do something, you could still get hurt. Okay, because even, they're machines. Things happen, malfunctions happen, they can catch on fire. Just a lot of things are very dangerous. But back in like the 1880s, there were no safety regulations. All right, so like a big thing is if like you're working in a factory, okay, no matter who you are, you gotta like wear like the proper safety equipment. Okay, you have to. It's a law. Back then there were no laws, so people ultimately, working in these factories, working around these machines, a lot of accidents happen. So bad working conditions were a huge issue. Okay. In the chat, please let me know if you guys read the book Liddy last year. I know some students did, some students didn't. I just want to get a sense. I know I've asked you. Yeah, it's some yeses, some nos, right? It's like students from 801 didn't, but 804 did, or 701, 704. Okay. So if you've seen Liddy, okay, you understand the struggles of working in a factory. I know I've asked you this question before, but I have a lot of students, so I tend to forget who does what sometimes. All right. Number two. Workers in the factories had this really kind of huge issue. They worked, it's like the match girl. I think so. Yeah. I thought she worked with the power loom and in the weaving factory, the textile factory, but maybe I'm wrong. Back then, there was no such thing as minimum wage. Okay, so right now, depending on the state you're in, if you work a job, you're going to get paid a minimum amount of money for a particular job. There was no minimum wage back throughout this time. So basically, the bosses of the company were able to basically tell you, okay, this is how much you're being paid. This is the hours you're working. If you don't like it, you're going to be fired. Okay, and if you don't like it, that's fine, because I could just hire an immigrant off the boat from Ellis Island and take your job, and we get the same amount of work job done. So a lot of people who worked in these types of industries and these type of factories would end up basically working very long hours for very little pay. I mean, when I talk long hours, I'm talking like 12-hour, 13-hour days, not get paid a lot of money. All right, but they did it because they needed a job. Having a job is better than no job. Okay, it's probably hard for you to understand as a kid, but as you get older, like when you have no money coming in, it's very challenging. All right, so you want to make sure that you constantly have a job. Yes, Josh, we will talk about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire at the end of the Progressive Era. So that's a couple weeks from now. The smell of the chemicals had them catch disease. Correct. Right, so there's a lot of bad working conditions in factories. And since the government was very laissez-faire, they didn't really get involved in making sure the proper safety regulations would change. And they also didn't really get involved to make sure people were being paid a fair wage. All right, that's more of a thing we do now in American history. I got to say this, a lot of the mistakes that were made in American history have always been kind of fixed and kind of at least improved, if it's not fully fixed. So yeah, you want people working very safely at their job. Weren't at this time, but we improve on that. All right. Number 3, when you have a lot of industry, you're going to have a rise in people moving to cities, which we'll talk about a little bit more. However, these factories, for number 1, this is more of an issue today, a lot of factories emit smoke, which emits pollution. All right. Huge problem. Now, back in 1890, were people concerned about pollution and global warming and climate change? No, they were not concerned. Not one of the big concerns. Much bigger concern now. But you see from all these factories over there, constant industry, it's led to some more environmental problems. All right, the more thing they were worried about at the time in 1890 was overcrowding. You are going to see how incredibly populated the cities were at this time and how crowded they were. You won't see it today, but you're going to start to see it over the next couple of days and weeks. And it is ugly when you look at it. It is ugly. All right. And the last thing would be child labor. Okay, the last thing is child labor. Now, I put ... there because we're going to spend a little bit more time on this a little bit later on. Maheen, Apple, and Microsoft use child labor, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure too. But Apple and Microsoft, though they are American-based companies, their workers do not work here. So those will be in other countries where child labor, I'm not sure is fully allowed by law, but definitely a lot more accepted. And, that's wrong for a lot of different reasons, but we're not going to dive into that too much just yet. All right, we're looking at the child labor with the ... because we will come back to it, but please know that this is also a huge problem. Little children used to work in factories. When I mean little children, I mean like 6, 7 years old. And these jobs were extremely dangerous, and oftentimes a lot of children would get hurt and someone would get killed working in these very dangerous factories. So we have some good, we have some bad. All right. Now, let's go to the assignment. I'm going to have to come out of, actually, before, let's just do the Regents questions really quick. This way I don't have to come back, and I can leave you guys on your own. Does anyone need more time? Please write in the chat if you need more time. I feel like they rushed through that one a little bit. No? All right. If Milagro says no, then we must be good. Okay. So, following Reconstruction, the term New South was most often used to describe, I've only seen 1 or 2 questions on the New South. I just threw one up here just so you guys have an example. Okay. This answer is 1, correct? This is an easy question after the notes. 5 months from now, I'll be a little pissed if you see something like this because this isn't something we talk about too much. But you need to understand that after the Civil War, our countries have become more focused on being industrial. Okay, according to the theory of laissez-faire government, the economy functions best when the government, hands off, excellent, does not interfere in business. That would be 4. We will talk about laissez-faire a lot. Anytime you see a laissez-faire question, it's usually an easy answer. And you'll see this a lot throughout the year. So I'm glad you guys got the first one. Good for you guys. All right. So I'm going to have to come out of this because my Google Meet stinks now. It changed something. It screwed me up in a big way. All right. So if you go to the Google Classroom, you're going to notice a Google Doc that's going to look a lot longer than it actually is. MLK had something to do with fixing working. Yes, he's not one of the big things he's known for, Josh, but obviously we know the big things he's known for. But yes, he did have stuff to do with that as well. We'll talk about that more when we get to Civil Rights Unit. Okay. So for you guys, everyone look here. You can skip this top box. I don't really need you to get the definitions. I think it would help, but I think you guys have enough work to do in all of your classes. I don't need you to waste 10, 15 minutes researching some of the vocabulary. Would it be helpful? Yes, but you don't really need to go into it too much, okay? We only spend about a week in industrialization, so I don't need you to go into the deep details of, you know, textile and labor. Like, we're going to see these words come up a lot. Instead, what I'd like you to do is do this kind of short web quest. You're going to get a reading on what's known as the Industrial Revolution. And I want to mention this. Industrial Revolution, industrialization, the Gilded Age, they all kind of get used in the same type of terms. So you've probably seen a lot of different terms here. It's all the same stuff. All right. So the Industrial Revolution, okay, is going to be kind of the stuff we're focused in on. What you need to kind of remember, though, is the Industrial Revolution doesn't start in the United States. It starts in other countries, okay, and then industry gets eventually brought to the United States. We're going to see how America became probably the #1 industrial country in the world by the beginning of 1900. I'm going to look at how that process takes place. So if you notice here, there is I'll put it in the chat here so you have it, but there is a website you're going to use called historycrunch.com. Okay, you're going to use that website. You're going to go to the area where it says, you know, whatever paragraph is labeled, that's going to be in bold. Then you're going to answer the questions that go along with. There are 11. I think if you work hard, you can maybe finish, but this is probably something you're going to have to finish up by the end of the day today. All right, and please remember, at the end of this unit or halfway through this unit, you will get a classwork grade, all right, for all of your work. So please make sure you stay on top of this stuff. All right. Do you guys have any questions before I leave you to this? Okay. Before you guys start to work on this, I want to mention tomorrow is a very important lesson, very complicated lesson. So I need to make sure that you guys are here on time. You're going to learn about monopolies, not the game, but something important for history. Very important that you're here and focused because it's going to carry a lot of, it's going to be important for a lot of the lessons going forward. So make sure you're here on time tomorrow. All right. You guys can get to it.